going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is Leo's Nerd Talk, and today we're going to be ranking every single Halloween Horror Nights maze that I went through. So let's get into that. Hey, my name is Leo, and if you like talking about movie, TV show, video game related, or just anything nerdy, you are in the right place. And like I said, today we are ranking all the Halloween Horror Nights mazes that I went through this year from worst to best. That was the first time I've done a video like this. I just released my full experience of Horror Nights just yesterday, where I talk about kind of everything that we did, how we kind of got through all the mazes, some of the food, experiences, interactions that we had with some of the scare actors. And I just kind of gave you a general kind of experience of what you should expect if you are deciding to go to Horror Nights. Now, this is going to be more, of course, more of a ranking. This is going to be the houses themselves. And really the way I'm going to be categorizing these are the ranking, or the placement of the ranking is going to be determined over the house itself, of course, the atmosphere, the scare factor of it, the just the production value of the maze, and there's also going to be the line and wait time, and that's going to all factor into kind of how I rank all these things all together. There's a couple other factors I can't really think of the top of my head, but just basically the overall experience of what the entire maze entails from start to finish once you get into the line to the point you leave the maze itself. But before I go into the ranking, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you are enjoying this types of content. If you want me to make more content like this every single year, or for different types of events like horror cons or different other festivals that relate to movies or anything like that, I would very much like to do so if this is some sort of content that you guys do very much like to see. With that being said, let's go ahead and get straight into the ranking. And coming in at my number 7 is going to be Poltergeist. Now, let me be perfectly clear. I think I had a good enough time with every single maze for the most part. There are certain mazes, obviously, that are lower for certain specific reasons. But with Poltergeist, it's mainly the fact that it was overall a very plain Jane type of maze. It was a maze that you typically kind of expect when you're going to these types of things, where half of the maze you're in dark spaces, walking through dark hallways from getting to one room to the next room, and there's not really much going on. And that a lot of this maze was really in that kind of atmosphere where I was literally standing, because we got bottlenecked at a certain part of the maze, and I was literally standing in a black hallway. It was literally just wood walls on either side painted black, and there was absolutely nothing going on in this room. And we stood there for a good 10, 15, 20 seconds, which isn't that big of a deal. But when you're walking through the rest of the maze, there's a lot of dark rooms where you can hardly see anything. There was hardly any scare actors kind of popping in and out of the walls and trying to scare you. So overall, it was still cool to be in the world of the Poltergeist house and stuff like that, but there wasn't much going on. Now, this definitely kind of gives a little bit of a bump, even though it is in last place, because the wait time was only 10 minutes. So for a maze that was boring like this, to get in and out in about 10-15 minutes, that is pretty solid, and I can't hold it too much against it. But if I waited an hour for this type of maze, that would absolutely be abysmal, and this would just be even below its own placing somehow. But it was just one of those mazes that were a little bit boring, but it's still fun to do, especially if you see that the wait time is very low. And coming in number 6, we're going to have Fallout. Now, Fallout's interesting. Again, another wait time that was very low, about 15 minutes. So the wait was fine. You're indoors with this one, so it's a little bit hot in there. So that kind of takes a little bit, because you've been walking around all day long and you're sweating, a little bit dehydrated probably. So kind of going into this maze, waiting 15 minutes wasn't too bad, but I saw these wait times be at 30-45 minutes. So I can only imagine being in that kind of indoor body heat place where it can get very uncomfortable. But besides that, going into the maze, I think it was actually very fun going into this maze, especially because if you like the show, this was based more on the show than the video game. You're going to see a lot of kind of comparisons to the show, and especially like the opening sequences and things like that of the show. So it was very fun. The production value was very good. Overall, though, I just don't think this maze is a maze that really belonged this year. It doesn't really have that scare factor that some of these other mazes could possibly have. And it's really just a big promotion for the upcoming season of Fallout. So that's kind of what this maze really entails. They tried really hard to make it as scary as possible, but when you have people really just jumping out at you with their vault suits, that's really not that scary. So ultimately, it's just one of those mazes that it was a fun experience to walk through it, but it, for the most part, felt lackluster because there really wasn't a scare factor to it. It was just kind of like, oh wow, look at that type of a maze. And coming at number 5, very similar to number 6, we have Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, this one I enjoyed a lot more walking through it. And of course, Five Nights at Freddy's is based off of a horror game and also, of course, the movie. So this one does have a little more of a horror element to it. Not to say that it was scary at all when you just have big animatronics kind of barely moving around. It's not really that big, like a big scare factor type of maze, but it is just fun walking through it, seeing all the animatronic work. I thought the production value on the animatronics were very, very well. The rooms and sequences that you're walking through, it felt like there was a little bit more going on, more at all times. Every room and hallway you're walking through, there was at least something to look at. You weren't walking through dark, empty spaces all the time. So it was very good in that aspect where the production value was done very well to actually keep you entertained as you're walking through this with a giant crowd. The only thing that knocks it down again is the line. The line was about an hour, hour and 20. You're going to wait pretty long for a Five Nights at Freddy's types of maze, especially because of the fact of how big this maze was getting to. But if this maze was a 30-minute wait, it would have bumped it up, I feel like, another space or two, because being in that world is very, very fun. Again, just really fun to get through these mazes and just see what the production value is like. Seeing the animatronics, seeing the environment, being in that atmosphere is really fun. Not scary at all. We're just waiting in line for the most part, mid-tier maze when it comes to scare factor. It does kind of bring it down a little bit, and you feel like you waited all that time just for a okay time walking through it. I was debating putting this on this list at all because it's not necessarily a maze, but the way they did this here definitely felt more as of a maze, and that is going to be the Terror Tram, and this year's theme was Blumhouse. So bunch of different IPs and properties from Blumhouse. You know, you have The Purge, Insidious, The Black Phone. This was kind of a big promotion for Blumhouse, essentially. And if you've ever been to these tram rides before, in the past, you're typically like in this giant open space, and it's just basically a scare zone, like where you just have scare actors kind of walking around and just trying to scare you as you're walking through just this big open space. This year, they kind of did a little bit different, where you're going from IP to IP to IP. So you start off at The Purge, and you go into Black Phone, then you go into Insidious, and you walk through it, and it's a much more confined space with scare actors popping out of walls and curtains and stuff like that. More traditional to like a regular maze that you would typically go and wait in line for and not take a tram. So because of that, I do think this kind of bumps it up a little bit, because you go through 5 or 6 different IPs. So it feels like in sequence you get through, you know, granted they're a lot shorter than a traditional maze, but you get through 5, 4, 6 different types of maze style places. And I thought, again, they did a pretty good job in terms of like the atmosphere, the production value. There was a lot going on. There was always something to see, always something to look at. So you're never bored. And especially when it comes to the tram, you come in with the entire audience of the tram. So you're coming with, you know, feels like about 100 people all at one time, but you never feel like you're bumping into someone, getting rushed or pushed back or shoved into a corner. It felt very comfortable walking through this. A lot of good atmosphere. The scare actors were doing very well. A lot of visuals to look at. Great practical effects on pretty much all accounts and stuff. So a very fun place to go to. And the tram is something that I always tend to miss a lot, because the tram closes a lot earlier than the rest of the park, because the tram takes about an hour to get through. You know, you have to wait in line, get in the tram. They drive you to the area that you're going to. You walk through the tram, and now you have to wait, get in the tram, and then they drive you back to the kind of tram station. So the whole experience takes about an hour once you get onto the tram, minus or apart from the fact that you have to still wait in line. And luckily, the wait time for the tram this year was very minimal, about 30 minutes we waited at least. And we saw it for a good 2 hours while we're in other lines for different mazes, just say no wait time. So that's even more surprising. When we got there, it was a little bit longer. And the wait time experience was fine on that one too, like you typically expect. And you know, it's outdoors, so it's not as hot, and there's still a lot of body heat, of course, but it still felt comfortable enough. And then getting onto the tram, it's one of those things where you have a little bit of a breather. You kind of get off your feet for a little bit as they drive you to the scare zones. And again, it was just a fun little experience, just walking through these mazes kind of back to back to back to back. So it felt like you accomplished a lot throughout the night, because with horror nights, you know, if you don't manage your time properly, you can spend hours just trying to get into one maze. And so going through this tram, it felt like you literally got through 5 mazes, and you feel like, oh wow, like we kind of did a lot already. So I still very much enjoyed this, even though each individual maze in this tram was more shortened. It was nice to see it just kind of be that back to back to back to back. So that was very fun as well. But coming at number 3, this one was a big surprise for me. We have the horrors of the Wyatt family, or the Wyatt Six, something like that. So this is basically a maze that's to honor a wrestler who passed away. I'm not too sure too much about his story or the context of this, but this maze felt very much Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque, where you had like bodies on tables and hanging pigs and sausages and, or like at least intestines maybe, or something like that. And all the Wyatt family, the way they kind of dressed up kind of feels like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family as well. So I'm not sure how that kind of inspires by this wrestler. I'm not sure what the lore behind that is. From what I know, this wrestler is kind of like was supposed to be like the newer generation Undertaker. So I'm not sure if this is just an inspiration of what the wrestler's character's backstory is kind of like, which I'm assuming it is, because if he was a murderous cannibal, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque style that it was, I'm not sure if we would be honoring him. But beyond that, I think it was a great maze, a very surprising maze. A lot of dark areas, but I think the dark areas were done very well, where you are just really trying to find where the next jump scare is going to be, because each individual room, there was still something going on. Even if it was a little bit darker and harder to see, there was still some scene that you're walking through, a kitchen with a body on it, or this like dark hallway. But they, instead of making just a plain dark hallway, they had like these sparkling lights all over, like as if you're walking up into stage in WWE. So it just had always something to kind of go by. And I thought they had some pretty good scares as well. A maze that I was really not even wanting to do. If we had to skip it, I would have been totally fine skipping it. But since it was only a 10-minute wait, going through it, I felt like it was a very, very surprising maze, and probably one of the better ones for sure. And, a lot of times with Horror Nights, these mazes that don't feel like a popular IP tend to be like the better ones, because they kind of have to show out a little bit more and bring people into these ones that seem like a little bit of an oddball when you look at the lineup of the mazes. So this one was highly, highly surprising for me. And coming at number 2, we have the Jason universe, probably the scariest maze. Still not scary by my standards, but it was probably the scariest maze, because this one felt like at every corner there was a Jason popping out of you, and typically with mazes like this, they pop out like a little window, or they move a curtain out, and they kind of just like but you have a guy that was like 6'2" with an axe, just like full sprint running at you, and like right before he gets to you, that's when he stops. So it's like those moments where you're like, oh shit, hell yeah. These really, really good scare actors, really good atmosphere. Kind of walking through Crystal Lake was pretty awesome. There was always something going on in this maze. Again, one of those other mazes that it didn't feel like it had a lot of dark spaces. Always something kind of going on, always something to look at, some gore or kill, or just atmosphere, a house that just looks really interesting. So I thought this was one of the better ones, and for sure they had to show out, because with this new Jason universe, they had to show out to kind of promote this new universe, this new IP with Jason. So I thought this was done very well. This was the longest wait. Apart from Five Nights at Freddy's, this was supposed to be a 2-hour wait, but we got into the maze in about an hour. So for me, for a wait that I was kind of dreading, it actually felt great, because we cut the wait time in half. So overall, I think the Jason universe gave us an absolute amazing experience, and definitely was the better mazes of the year, and some of the better mazes I've seen in the past couple of years. But coming to my number 1, was there any question? Probably not, but we have Terrifier. So Terrifier was the first maze we did of the night, and in that video that I posted yesterday, you'll see we got there extremely early. We ran and rushed to the Terrifier maze as soon as we could, because we did not want to wait 4 hours in line just to go see a Terrifier maze, and we ended up cutting our wait time down to 30 minutes. So that was absolutely awesome. All the Terrifier actors or Art the Clown actors that were roaming around or walking around, I think they all did absolutely amazing. The one that was up front of the maze, just kind of messing with the line and crowd as you walk by, I thought he was hilarious and fun, and really kind of embodied that Art the Clown style. And then again, walking through the maze, once again, it was a maze that was always something going on. You know, not the scariest maze, it was just a lot more of the like kind of showing what's going on, like showing different kills and different scenes, not really trying to scare you. It was kind of more of a presenting type of maze more than anything. But I still enjoyed it so much. It was still so much fun walking through. There's something always going on, a lot of gore, a lot of great different kill sequences and atmosphere. And, you know, you have your different smells and stuff to kind of make you a little more uncomfortable. This was one that they said that you're going to get extremely wet on. I barely got sprayed, so if you're worried about getting wet, but in the Hollywood one, not the Orlando one. I know I've seen people in Orlando one get soaked. In Hollywood, the Terrifier maze, you do not get as wet as you may think. I got more wet in the horrors of the Wyatt family more there than I did in the Terrifier maze, which is pretty insane. But overall, just a great maze. Walking through it, the Terrifier actors, the scare actors they were done so well, and especially because Damien Leone helped produce and kind of direct this maze, if you want to say, kind of help build this one and make it as accurate to the Terrifier franchise as possible. So him kind of being involved in this maze absolutely upped it, I believe, because he obviously had kind of creative control and decided how things were going to be set up and stuff like that. So overall, I think this maze was absolutely fantastic. But that is going to be it for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about all the mazes of Halloween Horror Nights if you have gone so far. Let me know if you've never gone before and is this kind of convincing you to go. Check out my other video from yesterday so you can kind of also view the full experience of what Horror Nights is kind of like. If you've never been and you've been thinking about going, maybe that will kind of help you decide whether or not you want to check it out this year, especially with all these big hitters. It's a very fun year to go for sure. But again, if you guys like time with a movie, TV show, video game later, or just anything nerdy, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.